Welcome to Creative Power, a podcast designed to help you claim the full spectrum of your creative potential. I'm Camilla Fellis-Arnold, and I'm passionate about discussing how we change the face of both the creative industries and how we interact with creativity itself, so that it nourishes our soul and helps us express ourselves with alignment, flow, and authenticity. Let's get started. Welcome to Creative Power. We've got Emily Tuck back with us again. For the last few weeks, we've been talking about after the spring equinox and Ostara. Emily talked to us about the kind of energy that we've got going on, how ideas were popping up and rising, but we also had subconscious fears and obstacles coming up in the way. And I've been talking over the last few episodes about how we can deal with some of those blocks. And as we've come to the 1st of May, which is Beltane, I've invited Emily back again. She's going to do a little introduction just to let us know who she is and what she does. But she is now going to talk to us about what we can expect from the next 6 weeks. So, Emily, welcome back. Tell us a bit about you.
Hi. Thank you, Camilla, for that fabulous introduction.
You are welcome.
Thank you for having me again. Essentially, what I do is I help, I work with women and or couples, to be fair, to find out about the archetype of Lilith and to use that to bespoke their lives by what is it that she's there to guide us through, and then also how does that then help shape your life and step you into your power, I guess. It's a really interesting one for me because Lilith actually is a guardian of creativity, hence the reason why we have this sort of drop in around this subject. So I've spoken to you guys previously about Involk and then Ostara, and now we've come around to Beltane. So what's interesting about Beltane is it's entering a new phase in the Chinese 5 elements as well. So Beltane is one of the major festivals. So the pagan wheel is broken into 4 major and 4 kind of solstices.
I think they're also called Espats. We've got the Sabbats, which are the major festivals, and the Espats, which are the minor ones.
There we are. So Beltane is a Sabbat. It's one of the major ones. So if you're in the northern hemisphere, as we are, then this is where you are for Beltane, which is a major Sabbat. So it's one of those moments that the major Sabbats, I find, are a little bit more of a hard stop when it comes to things. The energy completely changes in a good way. But what it does do is, where with Ostara, it was like, we could see the beginning of something, and then as you were coming, you could continue on that sort of trajectory, but it gave you a mid-stopping point, I guess.
It was almost like taking a little breather so you could regroup.
Indeed. Whereas what Beltane did this time last year, it brought me to an absolute standstill. I took the entire weekend off.
I did too. I went to bed, basically. I was just worn out.
And so that's the really interesting thing that I want to kind of mention about Beltane, because with the Chinese 5 elements, as you lay it over the top of the pagan wheel, we also enter a new element. And so we enter the fire element. So when you talk about, being kind of really tired, and you almost can't, if you're already kind of tired and exhausted from the wood phase, which incorporates Ostara, you haven't got any forward momentum on the same energy to keep going for another 12 weeks. And I think this is where, if we can go with the rhythm of it, it actually makes a massive difference to how we approach things. So what I do with each of the Sabbats, the 4 major festivals, is I take a hard stop. So when I'm looking at deadlines coming up to, I make sure that everything's over the line. But similarly, I allow myself at least a couple of days just to go, right, what's the energy feel like now? Because I can't really explain why, other than it's a Sabbat. But the energy feels entirely different than it did even a week ago.
It does. It really does feel like such a shift. And I felt it myself, that you just have to stop and take a breather, almost like taking stock, taking inventory. Where am I now? What do I want to do in the next 6 weeks, 12 weeks? Where am I going? And it's a really good opportunity to have that reflection time.
And that's where you might find that there were certain projects that were on the rise. Between in bulk and now, you've had 12 weeks, they've made it over the line, they're done, they're complete. But I don't quite know where I'm going to start the next lot yet. But that's okay. Don't panic, because as you come in, what it'll do is as the days go by and you feel more in that phase, you're like, oh, this is what this phase is for. This is what Beltane is for. So allowing yourself a couple of days for that hard stop can be really useful, and not rushing to think, like, I did it on a Saturday, now I'm going to do it on the Monday. What happens if it takes till Wednesday? Because it's a completely new phase, somehow that works.
And it's important to be kind to yourself as well, because as creatives, particularly, we've got this impression that we have to be turned on all the time, and there's always got to be all the ideas downloading and it's all got to be flowing. And actually it's saying, okay, you can take a breather, just give yourself a moment to see what's coming up and where are you going next. You're allowed to give yourself permission to, and be kind to yourself about it, because it's not this magical thing. It's not like a light switch that is turned on or off. It ebbs and flows, as we have discussed.
And I think with that comes the opportunity to recalibrate so one of the emotion that belongs to the fire element, which is at this time of year with Beltane, is joy. And love is the other emotion. And what it also does is the other emotion actually is hate, but it's not in the way we would understand it in the West. It means the absence of joy. So when you go, there's no joy here.
Oh, okay.
It's an absence of joy. And so what this 12 weeks offers us is the ability to balance that. Is there joy? Is there not joy? Or is it's the absence of joy? Okay, so how do I bring joy in?
I think it's a really good opportunity, actually, because I've talked about joy quite a few times on this podcast. It's my word of the year. And we are starting to get towards, this is month 5. We're nearly halfway through the year. And it's also that opportunity to look at your life and say, where is the joy? Because you know what? We have it in summer. We're able to go out. There's lots of things going on. The weather is better. So everyone feels more joyful anyway, which is great. But it's also looking at where is the joy in the small things, because as the summer will wear on and we'll head into winter, are we going to be able to keep up that? We won't be going out so much. We won't have all these exciting projects and things going on. So building a solid foundation of joy, not just in all the action and doing, but in the smaller parts of your life, that solid base, those foundations will really serve you later on in the year.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, the idea of joy in the small things. And I'll tell you why that's interesting to me, because it's when we're talking about changing who we're being in the world around the creative narrative and stuff. I remember listening to a different podcast, it was Diary of a CEO. And one of the guests was on there, and the guest was talking about the idea that there is no surcharge on dopamine. So these hits that happen when we do something joyful or when we achieve a goal or whatever it is. So whether that's a big creative goal that we've got over the line, or whether that's just, you know what, this is the subject that I'm going to get up to do today. This is the thing I'm going to create today, or the bit I'm going to write today. It doesn't matter. But you have that, endorphin hit of wow.
Yes.
So he was explaining that there's no surcharge on it. And so, for example, you might as well, he was describing it in terms of fitness, right? That you might as well acknowledge every single pound.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you only wait till you're 10 pounds in or 7 pounds in, you don't get an extra charge of dopamine and well done you and joy going through your body just because it was £7. You might as well have it 7 times and build a more solid and neurologically stable idea of joy. So why have it once when you can have it 7 times?
Well, yeah, because to kind of draw parallels to that, when you think of like how people love playing mobile games, they're getting those small rewards all the time and those little tiny hits. But we don't translate that into the other parts of our lives. We forget that, like creativity, for example, we always think of that tangible thing at the end of the project, where we've finished the canvas or we've made the sculpture or whatever it is. But actually, what about those moments during the day when you're, say, at the pottery wheel, or you are painting, you are drawing, and you've just done a bit that just looks amazing. You're doing a portrait of someone and you've just captured that eye just right, that looks exactly like them, and we don't stop and take a moment to just say, oh my goodness, wow, I did that and it's amazing. We're so focused on that end goal, that end result, the final piece where it all comes together, that we miss out on all of those little tiny bits of joy in the space.
So that for me was really important when it comes to Beltane, because this is our opportunity in the year to really focus in and regulate on that joy. Not just, I mean, we want it to be there all the time, of course, but there are phases when it is much more receptive, I guess, and much more front and centre. And between now and the 1st of August, so I will be back halfway through for the summer solstice in 6 weeks' time. But this 12-week window is the real opportunity. What have we harvested in joy? You know, what we create in joy. So that was one of the things I really wanted to kind of mention. The other thing that I think is important for this phase is the idea that, with the idea of, because we've moved from be, which was inward, we've moved into the doing phase, which is great in some ways, because instead of having those ideas incubate and maybe I'm thinking about it and am I standing in my own way, now we're feeling, okay, it's time to get on with that thing. It's the same energy that makes you go, right, I'm going to have a beach body. Right. But in that moment, what you do is we now go from, oh, I was thinking about that yoga class, to actually getting out the mat and actually doing that. And when we did it in the last 6 weeks, we may have done it and then gone, oh, yeah, but I got this thing in the corner I need to go do first. That's your subconscious getting in the way. Whereas as the energy rises into summer, what you're actually looking at then is it's easier to do.
We've got that forward momentum.
There is that forward momentum. So it's easier to do those things because, you know, it's brighter outside, etc. But what you also want to be mindful of, and this is for all the workaholics out there or the kind of go, 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 is that do, and doing can create this kind of overdoing and overburning. And and it's this idea that if you overdo it, you end up back where you started.
I think it's really important, because I remember last year, I got to sort of the end of August, September time. So we'd gone through that fire season and we were then kind of in the harvest, as it were. And I'd been going since about May. I'd just been working, showing up every single day, holding space, doing all the things. And by the end of it, I was so burnt out. And it's one of those things that's important to pace yourself and be mindful now, because we are excited. We're happier. We've got all this energy and get go, and we want to do all the things. But remember, rather than sprinting, it's actually a marathon. Like, keep the energy going, pace yourself, be mindful of how fast you're going. Will you have energy at the end of it, or will you suddenly fall into a slump because you burnt yourself out?
And so the beautiful thing with the fire element is that within the fire element there are 2 meridians, and they help regulate this process. So it's a way of kind of keeping yourself accountable is the wrong word, but kind of being mindful of that or being present to that during the next 4 months. So the one that runs your burnout, if you like, or your adrenals, or your go at the cost of, is actually your adrenal system. It's called the triple warmer meridian in acupuncture. But essentially what it does is it runs that process. So so if you're going from go, are you going from joy? Is that its own generating fire that is actually, I can do this day in, day out, and I love it. I personally am somebody who, when I find the joy in something, I can do it for days.
Yes, me too.
But that's how I'm built. But if I'm doing, but there's no joy, that's burnout. That's how we know the difference, as it were. And sometimes people aren't as aware as they could be, but it's about looking at that and going, okay, what can I do to bring that into balance? So within Chinese acupuncture, it has a partner, it has a wife to the husband, as it were. So the triple warmer is the husband, the circulation, sex meridian, or pericardium, is the wife. And that meridian regulates our legacy to the world. It regulates what we leave behind. It regulates our hormones. But what it also looks at is where are we bringing that from? Where's that? How's that joy getting out into the world? Is it on burnout, or is it actually let the yin of it? So using these two and letting them balance. Is it forward? Actually, no, let's stop a bit. It's draw it in a little. In keeping that in balance, you can actually kind of create for longer and a more sustained period. And I was very clear when I was preparing what to think about for this episode. It's not the same as sedation or hide your creativity under a bushel. It's not that energy at all. It's not sedation. It's allowing it to be paced and allowing it to take over from the burnout.
It's more measured and deliberate, because sedation is quite passive, whereas when you're very deliberate, when you're measured and intentional about what you're doing, that's more active, but not in a go, 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 really forceful kind of way.
And one of the other things I came to realise about this, that potentially that beginning of go, go, go part of creativity, because creatives do it a lot, and I've noticed it with you, that this is about part of this is about changing the narrative of creativity. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I work with the goddess of Lilith, and when I was researching her earlier, this time last year, if not earlier last year, what was in there was that what she does is, you know, that phase as the creative, you're like, oh, I fancy doing this. But you almost can feel it on the edge of, in the corner of your eye, you can feel it on the edge of the energy that if you're going to do this, your family's going to lose you for 30 days while you're busy creating that thing.
The creative mania, as it were.
Right. So the mania is run by the triple warmer because it's go, go, go. But equally, what this other piece does is, what they found with creatives is that they would have dreams. And I'm talking about the big artists, but it happens to everybody. So they mentioned people like Dura and Goya and, you know, big artists like that. And what they've said is that they would have dreams just prior to this go, go, go phase, this creation phase. And the dreams were of Lilith. And she would appear to them. And this goddess would appear to them and almost say, if you're going into this phase, you don't need to be afraid of it. I will guide you through it. So she becomes a conduit to support the go, 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 but also to keep it in a flowing manner rather than a mania burnout manner. So that by the end, you do have these beautiful creative things that you've made in all sorts of endeavours. But you've also done it in a kind of a constant fire that's burned for days and days, not a quick surge and then nothing. Because when you were talking about yourself last year, because you burned out quick, you also burned fast when you dropped.
Yes.
Whereas what she does is she helps you stoke that fire. And the other thing that she's been documented to try and support, or been knowing to support, is the kind of, depressive's a bit strong, but the kind of the isolation or the melancholy that can be there, because she allows that fire energy to keep coming in a gentle fashion but consistent fashion. Actually, the melancholy doesn't need to be there, and they reported that people who were allowing that process, so they allowed Lilith into their meditations and into their dreams, experienced less of it. So I actually think it's really powerful to be mindful of, you know, if you're going into this phase, use it and really utilize it. But utilize it to change the narrative. And for my part, I think with Lilith, it becomes, here's a companion to take you on that journey. You're not going alone.
I think that's really important.
To be supported and to guide them through that process.
Creativity is really, or it can feel really lonely. It can be, particularly things like writing, they can be a really solitary process. Not once they're done and they're going out into the world, that's a different story. But the actual trying to get it out of your head, out of your body, onto paper or whatever it is, whatever medium, it's a lonely process. And also there's this kind of allure of wanting to just fall into all of that exciting creation, and just wanting to kind of unleash yourself, let go of all of those inhibitions, and just create from the deepest, darkest depths of your soul and see what comes out. But I know for myself, and probably for a lot of other creatives, it can be really scary to even think about doing that, because of that fear of how much of yourself you will lose in the process. And then also with creatives, because it can be seen as like this innate talent, you know, you're gifted, you've been born with this. People don't always understand it, and they don't understand creatives. They kind of look at them and, oh, what do we do with that? So that also compounds this isolation, because not only are we struggling to get it out of ourselves and into a tangible form, but the rest of the world who isn't seeing themselves as creatives are looking at us like, what are you doing? I don't understand what to do with you. How do we support you? So the idea that Lilith can walk alongside us, I find really interesting. And I'm sure a lot of other people would sit there and say, that is interesting. How do we go about this? How do we start this process of walking with her?
Well, first of all, I think with walking with Lilith, the first thing you do is invite her in. First thing you do is actually set that intention and invite her in. Now, obviously, it will depend on the creative. Some people might do it in a meditation. Some people might do it by prayer. Some people might do it just by the moment they stand at their easel, or they sit at their pen at the desk with their pen. Whatever their kind of, put a bit of ritual into the process of inviting her into the space, so that it can be contained and it can be supported by her. I think so. Each person will have a different way of bringing that about. So there's a couple of examples. I've also found that when I'm working with people with Lilith about their sexuality and their relationships and transforming their relationships, their creativity naturally, changing their creativity naturally ripples out of that. So it's a really interesting time to use that, because if you know that your narrative is either I'm going to go into a hole, or I'm going to possibly burn out as I create this thing, use this as an opportunity to go, okay, I'm going to invite her in and see what difference that makes. See if by bringing it back into joy, by bringing it back into maybe how you structure your day, how she guides you to structure your day and your creative practice, actually, you come out of it a very different version. You still have those end results and those chapters written, or those paintings made, or whatever, you know, the crochet that you did, whatever it is that you were creating. But you come out of it in a different space, because you've come out of it with the idea of making something additional. Because Beltane is also about it's a sacred sexual union festival, where you've got the god and the goddess, and the idea is that they have this sexual union with the idea of creating a third thing. Well, what I've observed with people, with creators, is, or with people I've worked with, is that often when they go into that phase of, right, I'm going to make the thing, and they head off down into that adrenalized but manic kind of process, they do create the thing, but at the cost of themselves. So they don't create a third thing. They kind of their creativity cancels them out. And I spoke to an artist years ago who said, a friend of mine who was an artist years ago, who said it was almost like if he had to choose between him and the creativity, he chose himself. Well, that's fine in itself, but what if there's a third option?
Yes, we haven't been taught that there's even a third option available. And this is something that I'm really passionate about, having the conversation that we can rewrite this narrative. There is a third option. It doesn't have to be at the detriment of the creator themselves. There can be this culmination of you and your creativity creating a third party that lives outside of you. It's its own entity, and it doesn't cost you anything to do it on any kind of physical, emotional, spiritual level.
And I think for me, the only way that is doable, or at least is a way to start shaping that change or that transformation, is that it comes from a place of what do you love doing. So again, this fire element becomes a real opportunity to, okay, is it coming out of joy? Have I invited in a companion to take me on this journey? Right. And then after 3 or 4 days, if you're like, oh, that thing's not bringing me joy anymore, okay, no problem. I'll move to something else. Because as I alternate the things that bring me joy and I follow the joy rather than this project needs finishing, therefore I need to kill myself over it, actually you realise you get several things over the line. But more importantly, you have a solid idea of a subconscious version of yourself that does the creativity for the joy of and the love of the creativity of the thing that you make, and then the love of sharing it with the world.
Ultimately, that makes you so much more magnetic. I mean, I'm reminded of something that me and you talked about earlier today, where we were talking about why we're doing things. And we talked about why am I doing this versus how am I doing this? So often when we're coming at the projects and we're thinking, why am I doing this? Why am I making this? It could be, we want to make some money. We want to, tell a story. We want to do this, that, and the other. We've got to pay the bills. These are the whys. But when actually it's just how, reframed as to how am I doing this? It's more about, am I doing it because I love it? Am I bringing all this joy and gratitude and happiness into the space? Am I sharing it with the world, making something tangible at the end of it? Because I'm just so in love with what I'm doing and just can't help myself. I'm compelled to create because I'm happy. And that can actually make you even more magnetic to everyone else.
And I think it also, in a strange way, if we take the idea that creative ideas have their own kind of energy about them, writers talk about the characters meeting them.
Yes.
Treat Lilith much the same. But also what it does is as you become more and more joyful, you become more and more magnetic. So this is where that love, joy, hate is the absence of joy. The absence of love, because that is, and it's not necessarily hate in the strictest sense or kind of rage, that's a different thing. But this is an absence. So where is it? Where is my joy today? Where is my love of what I do today? What's the thing that brings me love? And actually, I watched you in your recovery from last year's burnout.
Yes, I was going to just talk about that actually. I literally...
Go ahead.
So when I was burnt out, and I remember I took several days, maybe even a week off, didn't come to my desk at all, sent the bare minimum of emails basically saying I will deal with this when I'm back. When I finally did come back to my desk, I remember looking at all of my projects that I thought, oh, none of them look interesting, none of them look fun, I just can't be bothered. They all felt like a chore. And I sat there and I thought, I don't know how I'm going to get back in action. I honestly just wanted to walk away from the desk again. And I sat there and I thought, okay, where is the joy for me today? And it became, that one sentence became my mantra for honestly maybe a month or even 2. I just say, where is the joy for me today? And initially it was just in something really small and not even creative. I went and sat and looked at pictures of dogs and I went and watched like funny videos and things like that just to bring me some joy. And then I thought to myself, okay, how can I translate this into actually doing some work maybe? Because otherwise I don't know how I'm going to get out of the hole. And what it led me to is doing my own passion project, which is to do with, based on my dogs, Shetland sheep dogs. I create books and all kinds of things based on Shelties, because as a side note, I don't think they're represented enough. When you go in a shop, you can see all the border collies and all the other dogs, and you never see anything with a Sheltie on. So that's my thing. And I love those dogs. So the idea of spending the day just looking at the cute dog pictures and working with that was like, oh my God, yeah, I can totally do that. I'm so excited. And I did that for the day. Didn't think anything more of it. Thought, oh, well, tomorrow I'll probably come back and feel rejuvenated and get on with something else. Sat at my desk the next day. Where is the joy for me today? Well, it's not in any of my other projects. So I went back to that dog project and I worked on it for at least a month. And what that did was it filled up the tank of where is the love and joy for me today. And it started to energize me in a completely different way, because I was coming from that space of, I'm really happy, I love what I'm doing. And then eventually I was able to intersperse that with other projects. And by the end of when that project did finish, I could move on to everything else. And I had something in me motivated. I even wanted to do those other things. And it all came back to, where is the joy for me today?
So one of the ways, I love that story, I have to say.
I never get tired of telling it, to be honest.
I have to say I loved hearing it. When I was thinking about that, and I was listening to you, it's about making sure that what is that passion project at that time? Because the other thing with this being Beltane being a hard stop on previous projects potentially, is that the things that brought you joy no longer have any life left in them. They've burned out. It's time to pick up some new ones. But by the same token, what happens if you've got 5 things that you want to do? Because I've never met a creative person who only has one thing on the go.
Very true.
It's a bit like holistic practitioners. They never have one modality. They've always got 12.
We can't help ourselves. There's just so many ideas and connections and things that you can do. There's just not enough time in the day to do them all.
So what happens if each time you went, which is the joyful one? For example, you know how you did your Sheltie?
Yeah.
Which is just Sheltie annual, and that was what you did for a whole month.
Mm-hmm.
And any time you tried to do anything else, you were just like, no, not feeling it yet. And I remember that for 6 weeks, you were just like, no, nothing's happening, just doing this. So, okay, eventually the Sheltie annual came to an end.
Yes.
But what happens if you had replaced that by another joy project?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that at any time where there was a dip, you could go, I can feel myself in a lack of joy because it's a balancing act. No problem. I'm going to step back from whatever this thing is. And I'm going to go back to my joy project for a day, half a day, whatever, a couple of days. It rides the tank a little more. And I know that for myself, there are parts. So I'm thinking about, right, what would my joy project be, and then keep that being replaced by another joy project, but always having something in that area of my life, rather than just allowing it to have a vacant space.
I think it's one of those things that it's really important, because we do have these passions and hobbies and things like that, but there can be times where you do put them down for whatever reason. And we're often quite hard on ourselves that we haven't picked it back up. But I actually really like what you're saying there about reframing it of, okay, I put down this passion project because the energy is not there, the interest is not there, it's in whatever state of being, but I can pick this other passion project back up. And the idea that actually it's almost cyclical in nature, that, you know, it might come back around again. It may be years from now. I mean, I'm thinking for myself about, I was probably about 10 or 11 when I picked up a piano accordion and learnt to play. Pretty much taught myself. My granddad helped me as well. And I've gone through phases with it. I spent years playing it and then dropped it for several years, then came back to it, and then I dropped it again. And I'm currently in a phase where I haven't played for probably about a year and a half. And there's days where I mug myself about it and like, oh, for goodness sake, pick it up again, because you know you love it, you know you enjoy it. But actually, what I'm hearing from you is, it's okay. It will come back around in its own time. You're just in a phase of, this is more interesting to you right now. This is what's bringing you joy right now. It doesn't mean that the old thing is gone forever. Just, you loved it then, you will love it again, or you can love it again. It will come back around in its own time.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And I'm just checking something, because so one of the things I find really interesting when it comes to those finding the joy in the project, and how, you know, what's the joy project and can you replace it with another one? In human design, we have two types, they split into 5 groups, but 2 types collectively make up 70% of the population. They're the generators and the manifesting generators. They make up 70% of the population.
That's a lot.
A lot of people. Because whether you consider yourself creative or not, you could well be a generator or a manifesting generator, separate to whether you think of yourself as creative. The reason I'm mentioning it is the manifesting generators are designed to go with the thing that brings them joy. Where's the joy? Where's the thing that's exciting? Where's the thing that feels, oh, that's exciting, let's play with that for a while. Then they have the ability to do that and multitask it. So 17 things that are also exciting. And potentially, from the outside world looking in, they may not be a finisher because they get excited, they get distracted by the other shiny new exciting thing. And that's absolutely fine because they're made that way. Right? So the other thing that then happens is the generators, as opposed to the manifesting generators, the generators are designed just to go with the shiny thing. Like, here's the shiny thing, and I'm going to stick with it till it's no longer shiny, which is fine. Now, that could be days, that could be weeks, that could be months. But what it does do is go where the joy is. So if you're within that 70% of the population that wants to do the things that bring you joy, how much more permission do you need to follow that? So that's how you're built. That's how you're made. And I think it compounds and compounds and compounds that joy, which in turn makes you magnetic because you never get bored of it. Now, its shape may change fractionally, or, yeah, I've done this phase of it, now I need to do this phase of it. That's fine. But also feel okay about handing off the stuff you don't want to do, because that's not what brings you joy.
And that will also help with burnout as well, and pacing yourself, outsourcing all of those things that you don't want to do. And it will, I've found in my own practice, when I started to outsource some of my projects, like just the tech stuff, for example, that I didn't enjoy, handing that off actually created space for more creativity, more new ideas, more energy, because I wasn't being bogged down by those things I hate. I am definitely in the camp of being a generator. I'm all about the joy. So that totally worked for me. And I think there's this perception, because we live in a society that's very much focused on suffering, and joy isn't allowed. It's like this carrot that is dangled in front of us, but we're not actually allowed to grab it and have it long term. It's not allowed. It's not for us to have as a state of being. It's not coming naturally to most people. That this idea that actually this is how we're built, and you automatically have permission to be like that, feels a little bit alien to people. But when you start to do that and see that for yourself, you kind of just can't help but build on it. Like for me, as I was talking about with that project and feeling burnt out and where is the joy for me today, once I realized that I'm getting that, dopamine hit of, oh my God, I'm enjoying myself, I'm loving my project, I'm doing my passion thing, I couldn't stop. And the only reason that I stopped doing it was because the book project finished. I'd finished making it and published it into the world. Otherwise, I would have carried on, because you just get into this cycle of where is the joy, where is the joy, where is the joy.
And the thing, when it comes back to the fire element about that, where is the joy, where is the joy, that creates a sustained and ever-growing, but not burning out fire. It's like, where's the burning, where's the fire, and that's do in a way that's feeding, not in a way that's destroying and burning you out. So that's a way to change the narrative, or to look at that burnout narrative, is actually, second it starts to feel like there's no joy, give yourself a fortnight, you're probably being burnout on it. So you know what, when it stops feeling joyful, permission to put it down.
I love that. I think for creators, that's a really important message. For me, that's like the most important thing I think you said to me. My biggest takeaway is actually, you know what, it's okay to put those things down if they're not bringing you joy. Doesn't mean that they won't ever again, but follow the joy right now, because you know what, life happens, things happen, we're in different stages of who we are, who we be in the world. So things that bring us joy today might not necessarily be the same tomorrow. That's okay. Because I found what you said earlier about how sometimes when you put something down and then you meet it again, however many months or years even later, and it clashes, it combines with something else that you now know or you've done to create something new, that then reinvigorates it and makes it fun again in a different way. Because you know what, we can't always go back to who we were back then. And I've had it in so many projects that are starting to regalvanize for myself now, things, ideas that I had years and years and years ago, and I just at the time wasn't able to get them out into the world for whatever reason. But now they're coming back around with a slightly different shape, because I know different things and I'm putting them together in a different way. But there's more energy in them again, and they will get over the line this time, of course, as well, because they're ready. They're ready to go out into the world, and there's also a new level of joy for them as well.
Exactly, and I think it's fascinating to watch them come round, because some of those ideas were only from 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago.
Yes.
But you know, some of those ideas could be years in the making. And it doesn't mean that they're not ready. It means that they wait. And you think about it in terms of animations, but also I have a feeling in terms of films. I'm feeling it's Matrix, but I might be making that up. But it was the idea that the plot was there long ago.
Yes, sometimes films can be in development hell for so long while they're trying to get everything lined up, but the actual script was written, the concept was there, and it's just taking time to line up everything to actually put it into action.
And I've got a feeling with The Matrix, it was a case of the CGI required to do it, meant the whole thing basically went on a shelf for however long. Whether that was a literal shelf or a metaphorical shelf, I don't know. But it kind of got parked in the corner for a bit. But years later, you go, oh, here it is.
There's that idea of sometimes, yeah, you do wait, and you don't always know why you're waiting. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It's okay either way. Be kind to yourself, because creativity is its own thing. And much as we live with it, we walk with it every single day, we don't always understand it, because it's got its own ebbs and flows and intentions. So just learn to accept that and walk with it.
And I know with myself, I'm very aware often of picking up a piece and going, oh, that's something, but I don't know what it is yet. But I'm very aware of taking a moment at that point when I feel myself putting it down, or I feel myself going, I don't know what that's about, I'm going to put it over here in a corner so I don't get caught up in it. I don't kind of flog myself because it's not there yet, because that takes all the joy out of it. But I'm very mindful in my head of doing it in a way that says both to the idea and to the universe, this idea, I'm not abandoning it. I'm simply waiting. I'm putting it over here so that when the idea comes back around in another outfit, or another piece that connects to it shows up somewhere, I can connect these two up, or I can connect these three up, or however many there are. But because I do it in a way that says I'm not leaving it or abandoning it, I think the creative idea hangs around a bit more, or, you know, I don't see other people doing a similar thing, or whatever it is, because it's still happy for me to get a buzz on.
Yeah, it's like you've kind of made a promise to it. Yeah,
I've contracted with that piece of creativity or that creative idea and said, I'm not abandoning you, I'm not ditching this off because I can't make it work, but right now we're waiting on something.
I love that.
And then you
idea.
go, oh, I'm suddenly excited again by this idea because I think this attaches to this, or I think I'm in a place where I can do this now.
I love that. It's like seeing a beautiful button or something and taking it home to go in your stash, because you know at some point that's going to come and be useful for something.
So yeah, you were saying that that's been a real interesting take home from this conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I love that idea that, you know what, we have permission to lean into our joy, because you know what, it's hard out there. And even the process of being creative, when you're drawing from all of those emotions, it can be tough. You know, we've kind of got it programmed into the narrative of creativity that it's suffering. But what you're saying is actually, no, lean into the joy of this, lean into the fun of the summer season and the fiery energy that we've got, this forward momentum, and just ask yourself, where is the joy? Put everything through that joy and happiness lens and see where you can go. And I think that's a really important take home. It is for me, certainly. So thank you so much for sharing with us. It's been really, really enlightening.
Thank you. I'm so glad it's been helpful. And for those who want to work with yourself and that creative joy, you know where to find Camilla. And if you feel like Lilith is an important part of that, then obviously my details will be in the show notes as well. So yeah, let's see what we can do with joy in the next 12 weeks.
Yeah, I will definitely be putting all of your links in the show notes. And Emily, you can find her on LinkedIn, search for Emily Tuck. And she also is going to be relaunching her podcast, Lilith Speaks. So if you're really intrigued by this conversation about what she said about Lilith and kind of walking with her, allowing Lilith to be your guide, then definitely give Lilith Speaks a listen. It's a fabulous thing, and I'm going to be guesting on there soon. So you will be able to hear me on there too, which is going to be exciting. So there we go. Thank you so much for coming back to us, Emily, and we will see you again in 6 weeks. It's going to be the summer solstice, and we will find out where we're going from there onwards.
Brilliant. An opportunity to take stock in fire.
Yes, that will be really interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about that. So thank you, and I will speak to you again in 6 weeks' time. And for my listeners, I will speak to you again next week. Thanks for listening to Creative Power today. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and consider leaving a review. To find out more ways you can connect or work with me, please visit www.camillafellisarnold.com/creative power.